Hello, this is Roxanne Perez, and today I'm presenting my research paper that I did for early acquisition of bilingualism, and it's titled Examining Additional Language Acquisition of Children in Multicultural and Multilingual Learning Environments. This presentation will look at the introduction of my research, explore the case studies of the focused children in this paper, and will be finished with the conclusion. 4 families were used in a case study to examine the strategies used in raising their children bilingually and in one case multilingually. This paper looked at the stages of language acquisition and the cognitive development of these early language learners. The overall goal of the study was to examine students in bilingual environments, both at home and at school, and compare and contrast the way these children learn languages. The study looked at 4 focused children whose ages range from 3 to 9, all from the same bilingual school. It's important to note that their school context is an IB international school with a diverse set of teaching staff and diverse student body. It's also important to mention that in addition, the parents selected were chosen with an overall goal. 2 sets of the Spanish parents are bilinguals, where one parent has a strong proficiency in their L2, which is English, and the other 2 sets of parents have at least one adult that is a native English speaker married to a Spanish L1 speaker. Inez, age 9 and 2 months, is considered an early simultaneous bilingual. She has been exposed to both English and Spanish since birth. Her parents developed a one-parent, one-language strategy in which the father, who is a university professor teaching English literature, uses his L2 to communicate with his daughter, and the mother, who has a low level of English, sticks to speaking purely in Spanish with Inez. We can consider Inez to be a compound bilingual. She has one semantic system and she has 2 linguistic codes. Now, when we talk about code switching, it depends on her mood, as both her parents and her teachers have explained in our face-to-face interviews. At age 9, Inez can be considered a true bilingual. She has a rich fluency and accent in both English and Spanish. And although she's not a sociable child, she does have great ability to express herself. And she has diverse friendships, which help her be surrounded more in the L2 English environment. Alvaro, as another student in 3rd grade, age 9 and 2 months, has the same profile as Inez, whereas the mother uses her L2 to communicate with her 2 children, and her father uses the L1. And just like Inez, he's a compound bilingual, having one semantic system and 2 linguistic codes. Now, Alvaro loves English and he loves communicating with everyone, and he has great accent, and he can imitate different accents that he hears in his English learning environment. However, as expressed by both educators and parents, reading is not his favorite pastime hobby, and this does influence his level of writing skills, which both parents and educators have expressed that this is an area that he needs to work on. However, orally, he speaks richly both in English and in Spanish. The next case study looked at Frida, age 5 and 2 months, who is an example of sequential acquisition. There are 3 languages that she's learning that are lexically mixed into an eventual structure differentiated by the languages, and we can say that she's stage 2, trying to create a structure and meaning in her L3. Her parents claim to use a one-parent, one-language strategy. Her father, who is Spanish and also speaks Catalan since birth, uses Catalan at home. Her mother, who is a English native, uses her L1 one, which it should say English, pardon me. However, both the mother and the father amongst themselves communicate in Spanish, so this one parent, one language strategy could be argued that it's not followed consistently, as Frida is around these 3 languages that the parents are mixing constantly. Now, we can also claim that she's accordant bilingual. This refers that a language learner is learning distinctively the language in separate contexts and has 2 semantic systems and 3 linguistic codes. And finally, we have Liam, who is age 4 and 3 months, who is an example of early simultaneous bilingual. He's been exposed to English and Spanish since birth. His parents mix the language, so there is no one strategy. His mother's Puerto Rican, and his father is Irish and Spanish, and they both grow up speaking their L1 in both Spanish and English. Now, he has 1 semantic system and 2 linguistic codes. It is important to note that in the summers, Liam spends time in Puerto Rico with his grandmother, whose L1 is in Spanish. And in Madrid, he spends a lot of time with his paternal grandmother, who is Irish and uses her first language, English, to communicate with her grandson. Though there were similarities in the profile of parents that were chosen in this case study, in certain aspects, like we can see with linguistic levels, the findings from child to child varied. The majority of times when one parent, one language strategy was used, it showed a higher proficiency, but that can be argued that these children are 9 years old and are at another point in their language learning journey than those children in the focus group that were in preschool. In the case of Frida, the child who is learning 3 languages, it was interesting to hear that her L3, which is Catalan, she wishes to only use this language in private settings at home, which has been respected by the parents. As I interviewed the parents and the educators in these children's learning environments, I began to want to further investigate more into exploring personality and emotional intelligence in these young language learners. So this is an area that I could revisit for further research. As an educator living in Spain for the past 12 years, I've had the opportunity of witnessing bilingual education movements in Madrid, working hands-on in different levels, preschool, primary school, secondary, and also collaborating with adult educators as they work on their English levels to be English teachers. Now, each year that I've been living in Spain, I see that it's becoming more and more globalized, multicultural, multilingual country, where communities are constantly shifting and individuals are moving in and out of them. So it's interesting to see the evolution of early language learners in Spain who are attending bilingual schools and who are interacting with this multicultural, multilingual community. As I spoke to families asking them how they interact with English or their L2 in their day-to-day life with their children, they all mentioned that they use English in a fun, ludic manner, communicative approach using real, natural English instead of drilling and killing grammar. So I would like to end with a quote from Stefan Krashen, who has said, "We do not acquire language by producing it, only by understanding it." I leave you here with my bibliography, a list of the sources that I found online, and I thank you for your attention.